Well, there are always going to be heightened tensions around the Games. Mass international events like this always attract protests of some form or other, and there's been political upheaval recently in France because of the elections. And then, of course, the attacks in Paris and Nice mean there's been really heightened security here. But nevertheless, those arson attacks this morning were a real shock, and there's a palpable sense of relief that they led only to inconvenience and not injury. Now, sabotaging national infrastructure is a serious crime. This appears to have been a coordinated attack by a group of people who knew the network well. There haven't been any arrests announced yet, and no motive mooted either. No one knows yet who's done this, and the Prime Minister has told everyone to stop speculating. But it did lead to hundreds of trains being cancelled this morning, many more being delayed as well. The lines are now up. 60 to 80% of trains are running over the weekend. Eurostar has cancelled a quarter of its services too, and actually the Prime Minister Keir Starmer had to last minute hop on a plane to get here. Hundreds of leaders are pouring in from all over the world in what has become a huge operation.
Resignation, exasperation and relief too this morning that a series of arson attacks on French rails overnight appeared to have targeted only its timetables, unleashing chaos on 800,000 passengers and marring the opening of one of the most tightly secured Olympics in history.
French people are already very apprehensive about the Olympic Games because there were a lot of problems of organization, and with this starting as well, it's not the best.
This isn't right. The Olympic Games ought to be a celebration, and with all of this, there are a lot of problems, and I find it badly managed.
It was in the early hours of this morning that saboteurs launched what France's state-owned rail company called a massive attack aimed at paralysing its fated high-speed network. Explosive devices were used to set fire to signal boxes in these three places along the Atlantic, Northern and Eastern high-speed lines, major arteries into Paris that link it to cities like Lille, Bordeaux and Strasbourg. But major disruption was avoided on the main line south to Marseille after an attempt to set fire to an electrical installation at Vergigny was foiled.
What we know, what we can see, is that this operation has been prepared and coordinated. Key points have been targeted, which show a certain knowledge of the network in order to know where to hit. I can't tell you more about the perpetrators and their motivations.
France's state-owned railway operator urged passengers to postpone their journeys. This not just the opening day of the Olympics, but a popular day for French people to go on holiday. France is a country scarred by the deadly attacks of 2015 in Paris and 2016 in Nice. Nerves around the security risk that comes with such a large-scale event are writ in the many thousands of officers and soldiers deployed to the capital. But today, words of reassurance from the president of the Games.
No, I don't have concern. We have full confidence in the French authorities. All the measures are being taken, and the French authorities are assisted by 180 other intelligence services around the world.
By lunchtime, the torch was being held aloft by the rapper Snoop Dogg as he made his way around the Stade de France. Keir Starmer wished Team GB his best. And the Games were officially declared open as 7,000 athletes meandered down the Seine on barges, with 300,000 spectators expected to be watching from its banks. The first ever opening outside of a stadium. The message then from Paris tonight: the show goes on, even if it's been an absolute nightmare getting there.
Well, the ceremony started just over half an hour ago, for the first time ever, not in a stadium, but along the Seine, and ending up at the Eiffel Tower. Behind me, Lady Gaga has just been performing. There are rumours that she'll do a duet with Celine Dion. There are rumours and speculation too about who the last torchbearer might be. Will it be the footballer Zinedine Zidane? We don't know. But what's clear is that the logistical drama of this morning doesn't seem to have dampened the mood, nor the rain. In fact, we've seen thousands of people streaming up to watch, and no doubt millions more will be watching at home as well.
Thanks, Amelia. Well, a short time ago, I spoke to the French MP, Eleanor Carrois, who's from President Macron's centrist Renaissance Party. And I began by asking her what she made of all the chaos.
It is indeed a very chaotic situation, and we are very concerned about it. Although we have heard in recent hours that the situation is going back to normal, we're very concerned that this was potentially a sabotage action. One thing seems to be clear is that this was intentional, and this is why we are all very concerned and looking forward to having more information, which we will certainly have in the next hours or so.
I mean, it has shown how vulnerable a large event is, even with all the security measures that you could imagine in place.
Yes, and this is the case anywhere in the world at pretty much any time. But it is true that there is a very, very large security system that has been deployed in Paris. We have all our forces, policemen, gendarmerie, and also military that are deployed to secure the entire zone. And this TGV action in the railroad system was not, I don't think, targeted at the Olympics per se, but it will, of course, have an impact.
Well, I mean, if it wasn't targeted at the Olympics, what do you think it was targeted at? I mean, was it targeted at the government?
It is also a possibility. I think right now in France, we have an unseen situation with some instability and the need to create a new government. And some factions of the French population are a bit extreme. This could be a terrorist attack, or it could be an internal attack. It really is too early to say.
Do you think this could be just a political act by a political group?
But we have seen in our history, in our, I would say, ancient history in the 40s, actions like this in the railroad system that have been political actions. But again, we will know more in a few hours.
Of course. And what would be your message to people who are still thinking of coming to France to enjoy the games and are now thinking twice and wondering whether they're going to be targeted again?
I would tell them to come and enjoy the games, and to be certain that their security is our number one preoccupation right now.
Eleanor Carrois, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, in Belgium, 3 Chechens have been charged with planning a terrorist attack, though prosecutors said there was no sign they had any specific target in mind. France's Interior Minister has thanked Belgium, but also suggested that he was more worried about tonight's weather than the security situation. Jonathan Rugman takes a look now at how Paris is trying to keep the Olympics safe.
In 2015, the year Paris bid for the Games, the city was the victim of major terrorist attacks. Over 140 people were killed by Islamist gunmen and suicide bombers. And the city's mayor wants today's opening ceremony to serve as a symbol of its recovery. French intelligence say they've seen no clear threat so far. France wants to project its soft power around the world, but it's vulnerable too, with a so-called lone wolf attacker often the hardest to spot. Last December, a man who said he was upset about Gaza killed a German tourist with a knife and a hammer near the Eiffel Tower. While earlier this week, a Russian man was charged with trying to destabilize the Olympics on behalf of a foreign power. On top of 45,000 police, that's 10 times the usual number, there are also 10,000 soldiers on duty today. They're concentrated on the parade route down the River Seine. It's just over 3.5 miles long and surrounded by metal barricades and checkpoints. Around 100 invited heads of government will be watching from near the Eiffel Tower. As of tonight, over 90 miles of airspace around Paris has been closed. The city's 4 airports have stopped flights as well. Soldiers on helicopters have been equipped with guns which can jam drones or shoot them down with lasers. While on the ground, individual QR codes have been issued to hundreds of thousands of spectators. There's no entry without the code, as well as proof of identity. Some 5,000 people were turned down for jobs at the Olympics because of their criminal records or for being flagged as potential extremists. And police have placed more than 150 suspected radicals under virtual house arrest. More than 20 metro stations in the capital were closed as of this morning, and some 500 buildings inside the secure zone have been searched, as well as the city's sewers and its famous catacombs. If all goes well, most of the police will leave Paris tomorrow. and no more QR codes or fences from then. So an enormous security operation for just a few hours in the global spotlight.
Well, earlier today, I spoke to Romain de Calbiac, a security expert in Paris, and I started by asking him to explain the complexity of the security assessment for these Olympics.
They are the dimensions which France would face from a security perspective with or without the Olympics, i.e. petty crime and around, the residual local threat posed by jihadi-inspired actors, and of course, political activists from all sides. When it comes to the Olympic, there's of course an additional layer that comes on top of that, which brings a unique dimension into play, which is the international media focus that the event is going to get, and therefore the also expected benefits that a series of attackers from all around the world could potentially reap from targeting such an event.
But what's different about the Paris Games is that a lot of the events are very, open air, in the city, yes. Very accessible, which is a lovely idea in terms of accessibility, but it's a security nightmare.
It is indeed, for all the reasons you mentioned. I mean, 6 kilometers of river to secure, a series of high points, be they corporate premises, be they residences, to secure as well. Everyone has the Trump scenario in mind. Of course, when it comes to isolated shooters, there's the issue posed by drones capable of potentially breaching through air defenses. There's a topic of underwater threat, because as you said, it's not just a long parade, it's also a naval parade. But that's for the ceremony itself. But the big problem with the security detail as it's designed at the moment is that it does come with a strong concentration of forces in Paris and around the location where the ceremony and some of the games will take place, but it also leaves a bit more exposed other areas, both within Paris and outside of Paris, to attacks against so-called soft targets.
It doesn't inspire confidence for potential visitors.
No, I'm playing the devil's advocate here by, of course, addressing all potential nightmare scenarios. French security forces have also done that work. They've been preparing for years. There have been a series of live and large-scale exercises in the past month. So those cases have been assessed. It is just that indeed the event is unprecedented. So risk zero doesn't exist. It is sure that I would advise visitors to be on the lookout and be careful. I do believe that the security perimeter set around the ceremony is quite strong. I would actually recommend to be a bit more careful for those actually attending the games from outside.
And how much international cooperation is there on the security front?
It's actually massive. It starts with the intelligence gathering and intelligence sharing process. French services have been partnering with the entire intelligence community from a global perspective, with information shared on Russian operators sent to France. Azerbaijan hybrid operations also directed against France. There are thousands of security personnel detached by participating nations to France at the moment. For anyone taking the subway in Paris at the moment, it's actually not a rare thing to see police officers coming from Brazil or from the Netherlands patrolling with their French counterparts. So,
as a security expert, would you advise your family and friends to go or stay away?
No, I would advise to go. I still believe that, as I said, risk zero doesn't exist. I actually have friends attending the event as we speak, and I'm pretty confident that things are going to be okay for them. It is indeed true that the event is unprecedented, and there is, of course, some degree of risk associated with it, but I still believe that the event itself is well secured, and French authorities have tried their very best to prevent, let's say, the worst case scenarios from happening.
Romain de Calbiac, thank you very much.
My pleasure.